Welcome to Travel Italia, the show about travel in Italy. Hi, welcome to Travel Italia, the show all about traveling in Italy. On today's episode, we're going to talk about money, or as the Italians call it, soldi. Over the years, a lot of people have asked me for advice on which payment methods they should use in Italy. Which is best, credit, debit, or cash? Today's show will be all about these options. So we'll discuss each one and talk about how you can get the very best exchange rate and save money. So in addition to talking about credit, cash, or debit cards, I'll also share with you some pitfalls and dangers you should avoid. So let's get started. First of all, let's talk about cash. Do you need cash in Italy? I would say yes. It's helpful to have some cash on hand for smaller purchases or, for example, to pay some tourist taxes that sometimes hotels charge you, and they only accept cash for these taxes. Some cities have these hotel taxes. For example, Florence does, and it's a tax that's applied per day, per person, and it's only payable in cash. It's usually a few euros a day, so you don't need a lot of cash. So in addition to just having some spending money for small purchases and maybe paying these hotel taxes, I would have some cash on hand, but not a lot. The truth is, you don't need to bring a boatload of cash with you. In fact, I think it's dangerous to bring a big wads of cash into the country. There are also laws about how much cash you can bring into Italy. You should be aware of these laws. So as a tourist, you are allowed to bring in a maximum of 10,000 euro or the equivalent in any currency. So if you bring in that amount or over, you have to declare the cash at customs. These laws are designed to fight illegal activity such as money laundering and the like. So keep in mind, like every country, Italy has its crime problem, and believe me, the mafia is alive and well here. So what happens if you bring over 10,000 euro into the country? Well, there are penalties, and if you don't declare it, or if you provide false information on your declaration, you'll be fined a minimum of 300 euro or even up to 40% of the amount of cash you're carrying. Ouch. Your money could be seized, and there might be other fines and even prison time if you deliberately falsify declaration forms. So it's certainly not worth taking any risk. So what is the best course of action? You need some cash, but how do you get it? In Italy, you should know that you cannot walk into a bank and exchange money unless you have an account at that bank. So here are your options. First, you can order cash from your bank in the US before you leave, or withdraw it from an ATM in Italy. Okay, an ATM in Italy is called a bancomat. I know, funny sounding word, but that's what they call it, a bancomat. But here are just a few words of warning about using an ATM in Italy. My first warning is this: never use a standalone ATM machine that is not connected to an actual bank. There are these weird standalone ATM machines, usually in very touristy areas. they're not a good idea for two reasons. First, the fees are much higher. And secondly, since they're not connected to a bank, there's a risk of fraud, obviously, like card skimming. And third, it's not a good idea because if something goes wrong and, say, the machine eats your card and doesn't spit it back out, which actually happened to me once, not a nice thing. You can't walk into a bank to get help. When it happened to me, I happened to be using an ATM that was right outside of an actual bank. So I walked into the bank and was able to get help immediately. But if you use these standalone ATMs, you won't have that kind of help. So if you're going to use your debit card to withdraw cash, be sure to use an ATM that is connected to an actual bank, and if possible, only use the ATM when the bank is open. So if something goes wrong, like it did for me, you can get help. It's perfectly safe to use your debit card at a bank to withdraw money at an ATM. Most ATMs have an English option, so you can follow the directions on the screen. There are fees when you withdraw cash in Italy, but those fees depend obviously on your bank and the bank you withdraw at. A typical fee is about 2 to 5 euros. Sometimes when you withdraw cash in Italy, the ATM, the bank sees that you have a foreign debit card and will offer you an exchange rate right there on the screen. I would decline these and just proceed through the transaction, which means you will get the exchange rate that your bank is offering. Okay, so now there's absolutely one thing that you should absolutely never do under any circumstances, and that is get cash by using the exchange booth that you see when you get off the plane. Okay, you see these exchange booths in airports and also in very touristy areas. It's an absolute ripoff. You really want to avoid it. You're going to either pay a hefty fee and get a lousy exchange rate, or pay a percentage of the total amount of cash you exchange and get a lousy exchange rate. So it's a lose-lose. So you want to completely steer clear of these places. A lot of people, when they arrive in Italy, maybe they didn't plan ahead of time, they haven't really thought about it, they get off the plane, they see these exchange places in the airport and they think, gee, I need some cash. I guess I'll get some cash here. This is very convenient. But I'm telling you, don't do it. It's a ripoff. Get your cash from a bank. And at the end of the episode, I'll talk about my preferred way of getting cash in Italy, so stay tuned. So we've established it's okay to use your debit card to withdraw cash, but what about purchases? I would say that it's not a good idea to use your debit card for purchases for two reasons. First, most banks in the US will charge you an international adjustment fee for every single purchase you make. These little fees, of course, add up and they'll cost you. The second reason is that it's risky, right? If you use your ATM card that is connected to your checking account, say where you keep money for your mortgage payment, and something happens and say it gets stolen or there's some kind of fraudulent activity, you could be in some serious problems. So in short, using your debit card for purchases is not a good idea. Let's move on to credit cards. Is it safe to use your credit card in Italy? I would say yes, it's safe. In fact, many travel credit cards have wonderful benefits for travelers. For example, The Chase Sapphire card offers free travel insurance and car rental insurance, which is a great way to save money. So, unlike debit cards, credit card companies will not charge you international fees. You'll just get their standard exchange rate. And I should say that most US banks offer exchange rates that are below the going exchange rate. So, for example, if you Google, dollar to euro or euro to dollar, and there's like the official international exchange rate. Most banks do not offer that. The way they make their money is to offer you less for your money, basically. And so instead of charging you a fee, they just give you a worse exchange rate. Okay, so that's just so you know, so you're not shocked when you get your money exchanged or you look at your credit card statement. So back to credit cards. Yes, I think credit cards are a great option, especially if you like racking up points. And like I said, if you have a travel credit card. If you have an upcoming trip, it's a good idea to check out a website like Nerd Wallets. They have a list of the best travel credit cards, and I'll put the link in the show notes for you. It's helpful to think about these things before your trip and to strategize to get the most for your money. I personally really like Chase Sapphire because, like I said, it just has so many benefits, free travel insurance and free car rental insurance and a travel voucher or credit every year. It's really a fantastic card. So I know there's a lot of travel credit cards out there. That's just the one I have the most experience with. So take that with a grain of salt. A word of warning about using cards in Italy. Remember to let your bank know that you're traveling before you leave the US. If you don't, you may be in for a surprise when you try to use your cards in Italy. So if you don't let your bank know that you're traveling abroad, they may block your card when you try to use it, thinking it is suspicious activity. So put that on the list of things to do before you leave. Let your bank know that you're going to be traveling. So we've covered cash, debit, and credit, but there's one more option I think is a really great choice, especially for those of you who don't want to use a credit card. I really think for you, this is the best option. In recent years, there's been new online banks that have sprung up, and one in particular that offers a fantastic card for traveling. I'm talking about a company called Wise, WISE. You can find them at wise.com. I'll put the link in the show notes. They're great because they offer an international debit card that you can use in 160 countries with 40 different currencies. And this is how it works. It's kind of like an international prepaid debit card. It comes with a helpful app that you can use to add money from either your savings or your U.S. savings or your U.S. checking account directly to this card, and then you can use it for purchases in Italy or even ATM withdrawals. The benefits of using this card are that the exchange rate that you get is much better than most U.S. banks, and the fees are extraordinarily low. I happen to have one of these cards, and I use it on a daily basis. It's really convenient and it saves you a lot of money on fees. So I encourage you to click on the link in the show notes to learn more about Wise and get your card before your trip. There is a small fee to get a card, but trust me, it is a great option instead of using your debit card for cash. I personally use my Wise card and my travel credit card for most purchases here in Italy, and I'm happy with that. I also want to mention Apple Pay. Unlike the US, Apple Pay is just not widely used yet. Italy tends to be behind technologically than the US. It's, things come out first in the US technology. Most technology is created in the US. So Apple Pay just isn't used as much. Maybe if you're in a bigger city, it might be available, but in general, it's just not used very much. So there you have it, folks. I hope this discussion about cash, credit, or debit has been helpful. Like I said, check out the show notes for links to Wise and that NerdWallet article. Thank you for listening, and I wish you a buon viaggio. Ciao.